In general terms, if asked what is demand, most of us say that demand is the desire, want or need to purchase a good or a service at a given price. But in economic sense, desire or need is not a demand until and unless it is backed up by a willingness or ability to pay. Quantity demanded is the amount of a particular good or service that consumers are willing or able to purchase at a given price during a given period of time. The contrasting types of demand are individual and market demand, out of which the former is individual demand and the latter is the aggregate of individual demands. Company versus industry demand, where demand by a single company is a company demand while the total demand of all the companies put together of that industry is industry demand. Market segment versus total market demand, where demand of a particular segment of the market is market segment and demand of all the segments put together is market demand. Domestic versus national demand, where demand in an economy including imports but excluding exports is domestic demand, while the total demand in an economy is national demand. Direct versus derived demand, where demand for a good or a service in response to its own price is direct demand, whereas demand of a good or a service derived from demand for another good or service is derived demand. Autonomous versus induced demand, where demand for goods or services in response to explicit factors like price, income, etc. is induced demand, but the same demand where the impact of implicit factors are not stated is called autonomous demand. New versus replacement demand, where demand for a new good or service is new demand, whereas when a good is not purchased but repaired or some parts are replaced, then it becomes replacement demand. Household versus corporate versus government demand. A good may be required for domestic use by households or may be required in office or factories or in a government office. For example, a furniture may be required by a household, household demand, or a furnishing and decorator company, company demand, or by a director general of suppliers and disposables, government demand. Demand depends on a number of factors which are referred to as explanatory variables. The most important variable that influences demand is its own price. Other factors like income, consumer preferences, etc. remain constant. A consumer buys more at a lower price and less at a higher price. Other factors that influence demand are the income of the consumers, price of related goods, estimation of future price and income, advertising expenditure undertaken by the firm, and taste and preferences of the consumers. Income is the purchasing power of the buyer and constitutes the constraining factors. If income is flexible and variable, then for all normal goods, higher income make buyers to demand more and vice versa. The next determinant of demand of a commodity is the price of related goods. In case of complementary goods, a fall in price of a good may lead to an increase in demand of the related good. If price of car falls, people might purchase more cars, and in turn demand for petrol may also rise. In case of substitute goods, a fall in price of a good may lead to a decrease in demand for the substitute good. If the price of tea falls, people will consume more tea and this will lead to a lower demand for coffee. A rise in price may be taken as a prelude to further rise in prices and therefore some consumers may decide to purchase more at higher price. In the same manner, if consumers expect that their pay is going to be hiked, they might be induced to buy some more consumer durables. The rule of exception factors depend a lot on the psychology of the buyer, which is not always accurately predictable. Another factor that influences buyers' behavior and consumers' demand is advertising expenditure undertaken by the firm. It may be a positive impact on demand, but up to a point. One firm's advertisement may kill another firm's demand. For example, advertisement may induce buyers to change their preferences to another brand of toothpaste. In addition to all these factors, other factors like cost and credit availability, size of family, family needs, and neighbors' demonstration, community compulsion also affect demand. Consumers' demand and preferences can also be a major influencer. It depends on the lifestyle, fashion, religious values, culture, habit, and customs. As these changes, demand for some goods may also change. The graph shown here illustrates the law of demand, which states that other factors remaining constant, the quantity demanded of a good or services varies inversely with its price. The negative slope of the demand curve is explained by the income effect and substitution effect of the price change. When the price of a commodity falls, less has to be spent on purchase of the same quantity of the commodity. This has the effect of increasing the purchasing power of the given money. This is the income effect of a fall in price of the commodity. With this increase in real income, the household buys more of commodity in question. The effects operate in reverse when the price of commodity rises. When the price of a commodity falls, it becomes cheaper relative to other commodities. This leads to substitution of other commodities. This is called substitution effect, and demand for cheaper commodity rises in consequence. When the price of commodity arises, this effect operates in reverse. Thus, income effect and substitution effect together explain the behavior of individual household in form of law and demand. If the commodity in question is an inferior good, the increase in real income relating from the reduction in its price will lead the consumer to purchase less, not more, of the commodity. Thus, the income effect will be negative, while the substitution effect continues to be positive to lead the customers to purchase more of the commodity when its price falls. For most of the inferior goods, the positive substitution effect will be more than offset the negative income effect, so that the demand curve is negatively sloped. Now, let us talk about luxury products, also referred as Veblen goods. As an exception to the law of demand, these goods show direct price and demand relationship. Similarly, as the price falls, the demand may be down, as production loses its upmarket image. The change in price of a good or service leads to movement along the demand curve. As we move from higher prices to lower prices, we move down the demand curve and vice versa. There is an extension or expansion of demand due to fall in price and contraction of demand due to rise in price. The same is shown in this figure, where A shows contraction of demand while B shows expansion of demand. The figure discusses shift of demand curve. When we consider a multivariate function and allow a change in factors other than own price, it leads to shift in demand curve. In other words, price of the commodity remaining constant, change in other factors like income of the consumer, price of related goods, etc. leads to a shift in demand curve. Rightward shift of the demand curve shows increase in demand, and leftward shift shows a decrease in demand. A very important concept of the theory of demand is elasticity of demand, which measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good or a service to change in factors like price, income, etc. Price elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded of good or service to changes in its own price. Where a product has downward sloping demand curve, as in the usual case, the value of price elasticity of demand will always be negative. This is because when price rises, demand falls, and vice versa. Two different types of price elasticity can be calculated as arc elasticity of demand and point elasticity of demand. Arc elasticity measures the responsiveness of demand between 2 points, for example x and y on the demand curve. As x and y come closer together, the arc shrinks in size, and the two values for elasticities calculated at both the points separately will get closer to each other. If the distance is negligible, the arc will end up as a single point, and the arc elasticity calculation can be replaced by that for point elasticity. This slide shows various degrees of elasticity of demand. Figure A shows perfectly inelastic demand. Figure B shows perfectly elastic demand. Figure C shows unitary elastic demand, and Figure D shows the range of demand elasticity from 0 to infinity. Cross-price elasticity of demand, which is sometimes simply referred to as cross-elasticity, indicates the responsiveness of the demand from one product to changes in the price of the other goods services. The concept has most relevance whether there are obvious substitutes or complementary commodities, and it is therefore of key importance of business which face major competition, or whose sales vary directly with the sales of other goods. Examples: mortgage and mortgage protection insurance. In the case of complementary products, the resultant value will be negative. If the demand for the two goods appear to be unrelated, then, of course, the cross-price elasticities between them can be expected to be negligible or zero. The terminology regarding the degree of cross-price elasticity is the same as for price elasticity. which is 1 is equal to unit cross price elasticity, less than 1 is equal to inelastic cross price elasticity, and greater than 1 is equal to elastic cross price elasticity. Demand is also likely to be responsiveness to factors other than own price and the price of complements and substitutes. One important factor is real income. Empirical studies usually define nominal income in terms of either household disposable income or gross national income. The value of income elasticity will usually be positive, suggesting that more is bought as real income rises, though for certain products it may be negative. The actual value of income elasticities can be used to classify products into inferior goods, which are goods of which consumers buy less when real income rises. The value of income elasticity is therefore negative. Examples might be cheap package holidays and normal goods, which are the most common goods, with demands usually rising as real income rises. Demand forecasting deals with the issues of estimating demand relationship, which is concerned with deriving the best specification of relationship between the quantity of the product demanded by consumers and the factors that influence this demand, and forecasting demand that can form the basis of both short-term and long-term decisions. Forecasting is concerned with extrapolation or projection of future behavior on basis of past behavior. There are several methods available to help management collect information about consumer behavior in relation to the firm's product and form the basis of demand estimation and forecasting. These may be broadly categorized under the heading of consumer surveys and market experiments. In essence, consumer surveys seek to discover the future buying intention of consumers by eliciting their probable reactions to a range of conditions concerning price, advertising spend, product quality and design, and so on. A great deal of skill is required on part of the institutions conducting surveys to ensure that the questions are not misleading and they are framed in a way that the respondent is not enticed into giving the answer the firm wanted in the first place. Rather than pose hypothetical questions to potential customers, the firm may opt instead to carry out a direct market experiment in order to test buyers' reaction to actual changes introduced, while attempting so far as is possible to keep other market conditions fairly stable or under control. In general, the different methods of market experimentation employed by firms fall under one of the headings, like sales wave research, simulated store techniques, and test marketing. Sales wave research involves the selection of group of consumers, supplying them initially with the product at no cost, and enables the firm to assess the rate of repeat purchases and to estimate the impact of different competing brands. Simulated store techniques involve the establishment of a sample group of shoppers who are shown a number of advertising commercials for a range of product, including those for a new product to be launched by the firm, and then giving them some money. Purchases of new product and competitors' product by the sample group can then be monitored. Discussions may be held with the customers to discuss their buying preferences, with subsequent follow-up interviews to find out if these preferences have changed. Test marketing involves actual selling the product in a limited number of locations with different packaging and advertising campaigns in order to test market sections. The scale of test marketing may be fairly small, based in only a few shops, or it could be a full-scale experiment spread across many regions of the country. It is possible to estimate the demand statistically by using the technique of regression analysis. The basic principles are rather simple, but there are a few problems concerning reliability of the estimates. The demand for a product can be estimated in 5 steps, namely identification of variables, combination of data, specification of form of the demand relationship, estimation of the demand relationship, and evaluation of the estimated demand relationship. Once the demand relationship has been specified and the estimates derived from the coefficients, we then need to evaluate the estimation. The simplest illustration of the identification problem arises when we attempt to relate the price of a good to its sales over time. This approach, however, is seriously flawed for the market price at any point in time and is determined by both the demand and supply curves. If the market is competitive, especially the equilibrium value of price will be at a level where the demand and supply curves intersect, showing the quantity that consumers are willing to buy and suppliers are prepared to supply at that price. it is very likely that the demand and supply curves for the product will be different each year. The problem arises because of the need to hold constant the other non-price variables such as income, the prices of other goods, consumer tastes, advertising expenditure, etc., which affect demand when constructing the demand curve. Various demand forecasting techniques can be put in either of the two categories, namely barometric methods and econometric methods. While barometric methods specifically include historic analogy method, survey method, trend method, end-use method, and leading indicators method. The econometric methods include statistical regression method and single equation and simultaneous equation econometric models.